Okay, so this is day 3 of the 69 fastback. I'm doing the front end on it. As you can see from the other videos, front end was cut off. I was working in the torque box area, getting the floor supports open, prepping everything for the new metal to go against so the surfaces are clean where I'm going to weld. And then all day, end of the day yesterday, and all day today, just lining up the front end, getting all my measurements back to where they should be. Like I said before, this car was wrecked a little bit and it had some patchwork done, mostly to the passenger side. So just correcting all that and getting everything back to where it should be is what I'm spending all my time on. So I'm just going to go over some of the points on the car here, just to show you what I'm looking for, lining everything back up on this front end before I start welding it. All right, just to go over a couple of the different spots where I'm looking at before I take my measurements. I'm not going to go over all the spots because there's a ton of spots. The more you measure, the better the result's going to be. I can't stress that enough, just to get everything lined up, because if this front end is cocked to one side or the other, nothing's going to line up, because everything's relying on this front end. Your alignment, all your suspension parts, mounting up, fenders, hood, everything is relying on this to be straight. So just a couple points that I go off of is my frame rail height. Like I was saying before, that's what I have this level platform for, is to base all my measurements off of. So I take from the bottom of the frame rails down, both sides, making sure everything's even across, because both left and right should be the same. I got everything the same on both sides, height-wise, the whole way back to the front of the floor support, and then to the back end of the floor support down, which those are the original floor supports, and they were in the correct place. They weren't shoved or anything like that, so everything's good there. And let's see, some of the other points. What's nice about using all new pieces on the front, your frame rails, the width in between left to right inside is going to be almost set for you, because the radiator support will butt up against the frame rails. But sometimes the radiator support could be a little bit off, so you want to go off of your measurement of what between the rails should be, and that goes for the same in the back, and they are straight up through. The measurement is the same up through. And I have, like I said before, a bunch of cross measurements from points back on the cowl out to the front corner on each side. Same for that corner out to this side. I have distances from points on the cowl out to where the fender holes should be. And this being a one-piece shock tower, all the aprons are welded together, so all those points are already set for you. But from your cowl out to the end should be the same. So setting that is one of the other things I look for. And I always put an export brace in. This customer had an export brace, a nice aftermarket one. So I set that to help set up this front end, bolted that in place. And it helps hold everything together so that it keeps everything sturdy for when you're making your measurements. And I screw everything in place before I weld, just so I can have vice grips out of the way. Then I can sit back, measure everything multiple times before I start welding. But I have it drawn to the firewall. I have some screws even for the floor support into the frame rail, just to pull everything tight. I like the screwing method there of that, just because it'll draw everything tight. Also, real quick, another technique that I found helpful for these, as you can see down there, is ratchet straps, believe it or not. They help pull things in the direction that you want them to go. In this case, whenever I was putting everything together, it wanted to veer to the right. So that's why I have that cross one pulling that frame rails over to the left to keep them in the place where I want them. And also, like you can see on that one there, I have it tied to the cross member for the transmission, just to draw the frame rail back against the firewall as best as I can, because it needs to line up to everything in that area the whole way up. So drawing that back against the firewall, you can't push it. You're going to push it, especially unless you have the car clamped down so it doesn't move. If you're pushing on this shock tower, it's going to want to move the car. So drawing it together with that ratchet strap helps. And you can see I have one on the outside of this one to help keep this frame rail staying to the left where I want it to be. And also at the same time drawing it back into the firewall. So I'm leaving that in place, leaving the shock tower brace in place to keep everything stiff and where it should be as I'm welding it. And I already have my radiator support brackets in place, just clamped down right where they should be. So everything is ready to be welded on this car now. I've gone over it several times, triple, quadruple checked. Everything's good. The last thing that I'll do after everything's welded is put on the outer torque boxes in place, and that will tie everything together even more. And I'll leave the shock tower brace in place while I'm doing that, just so it keeps everything square until I have the last weld in place. So I'm just about to fire up the welder and get to that. There's a lot of welds to fill and then a lot of welds to grind down. So there's a lot of work from this point, but we're over the hump and it's getting there. All right, so that was day 3 on this 69 Fastback. Just going over everything, make sure your car is square. That's the biggest thing that I can stress before you start welding, because you don't want to undo your welds. That's just a nightmare. If you've ever undid someone else's welds, you know what I'm talking about. So you want to do it right the first time. And so we'll check back in tomorrow or the next day. It should be pretty much done. I told the customer to be about a week, and that's what it's going to end up being. So I was right on with that estimate. But yeah, check in tomorrow, see if I have another one posted. Thanks for watching this one. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll keep you posted on the next one.